Today I am going to be going over the 3 most common reasons for people's lack of progress in the gym. And all of these are pretty much equally as common, but the last one is by far the most common reason for why people don't make any progress. So now you have to stick around to the end. Or you can just skip forward, but please don't do that. Anyways, starting off with the first one, it's too much volume. A lot of people who go to the gym do too many exercises and too many sets. And instead of actually training hard on the sets that they are doing, they just instead do a bunch of sets and a bunch of exercises for a bunch of different muscle groups, thinking that more simply equals better. But this is not the case. We do not want to do any more exercise than the minimal amount required in order to stimulate the improvements that we want. And the reason behind why we do not want to do any more exercise than is minimally required is because our body has a limited amount of resources that it can devote to recovery and adaptation. And every single time we train, we dig a hole into our recoverability. And so our body has to use that amount of limited resources that it has in order to fill that hole. And if the exercise was of sufficient intensity, our body will also, if it has the resources, build a little mountain on top. It will produce the improvements. And so if we do more exercise than what is minimally required in order to stimulate the improvements that we want, the only thing that we are doing is that we are making our body have to devote more of its limited resources towards recovery, so it has less over for adaptation or building the mountain on top. But what is the minimum amount of exercise required then? Well, if you do your sets properly, and I mean properly, okay? Most people don't know how to do their sets properly, even if they think they do. Most people do their sets terribly. Most people's sets, they suck, which is why they can get away with doing so many, because they're not very fatiguing. But if you do your sets properly, all that you need is one set to failure. And I know you guys probably have heard someone talk about this before, like Mike Mentzer or maybe someone else online. And a lot of you feel probably very skeptical almost immediately when you hear me say this. And I understand that because it is completely against what we all have learned. But I've actually talked about this in other videos and explained the reason why this is actually all you need if you do it properly. And I have a video on my channel called Why I Only Do 1 Set Per Exercise, where I talk about this, and yes, that is also true. I only do 1 set per exercise. And no matter how skeptical you feel, I encourage you to at least go and give this video a watch. And if you're still not convinced, then you can unsubscribe, or you never have to watch me again, or you can just do whatever the fuck you want. Like, I can't make you do anything. I can just tell you what I think you should do based on my knowledge and my experience. And yeah, whoever you trust is completely up to you. So you don't have to trust me, but all I'm saying is that if you do a set properly to failure, all you need is 1 set per exercise. But to be clear, for most people, the way most people do their sets, yes, 3, maybe 4 sets or 2 sets sometimes, depending on how well you do it, will be more effective. And I'm not meaning to insult you here, but 3 shitty sets are better than 1 shitty set. 1 properly performed set is all you need. Because if you do 1 properly performed set, and it is actually properly performed to momentary muscular failure, then you have recruited and stimulated all the muscle fibers in whatever muscle group you are training, and so there's no point in doing anymore. And I know another thing which a lot of you will be thinking about now, which is, oh well, isn't volume important? Well, I am going to make, after I post this video, I am going to start making another video, which I will be naming The Real Definition of Volume, where I will be talking about the real definition of volume. And the thing is that a lot of people have the real definition of volume. I know I've said that word 3 times now, but they have the real definition of volume confused with something else. They think that volume means sets and reps, but it's not actually sets and reps. The real definition of volume is time under meaningful load, and I will talk about this more in the next video that I will post. So I will explain it more thoroughly so you will understand why this one set to failure thing as well isn't actually low volume training, even though it seems like it, if you have the assumption that volume means sets and reps. But anyways, I know a lot of you probably will be a little bit upset by this first part of the video, but if you are, then just forget this part of the video and let's move on to the next one. The second one is lack of recovery. People have different genetics and people recover and adapt from exercise at very, very different speeds. Some people can train every other day and make progress, and some people who have extremely bad recovery ability, now keep in mind this is like probably less than 1% of the population, but some people can only train, every 2 to 3 weeks and make progress. And if they train more than that, they will be overtrained. And I know this might sound crazy, but this is actually the case. It has been documented in studies. 2 people can do the exact same workout program with the exact same intensity, and one can make progress, one gets stronger and one gets weaker, and that's because people have different recovery ability. One person will make progress on a program and another person will overtrain on the same program because, again, different recovery abilities. And so if you're training so frequently that our body is not given enough time in order to recover from the workout that you have just done, our progress will be compromised. You will either have a stagnation in progress, you will make no progress, or if you're training so frequently that you are overtraining, then you will start to get weaker. Your progress will go backwards. And so this is why it is so important to find the right frequency for you, because there is no universal rule that says that training 3 or 4 times a week is superior to training 2 times a week, or that 2 times a week is superior to training once a week for everybody. Everyone, again, has different recovery ability, and some people who can get away with training 3 times a week and still recover and adapt in between workouts, that is going to be the best frequency for them. Now keep in mind that the difference in speed of results between training twice a week and 3 times a week isn't actually very big. They've shown this in studies. The difference is only a couple of percent. But for people who can handle training 3 or 2 times a week, the difference between training twice a week and once a week is somewhat more significant. And so if you're able to train twice a week on a given program, or able to train 3 times a week on a given program, then that is going to be the best frequency for you if you want the absolute 100% best progress that you can have. But again, if you can train 3 times a week, you can still train 2 times a week and the difference won't be very noticeable. But also keep in mind that no matter what exercise program you pick, at the end of the day, it is all going to take you to the exact same destination, which is your genetic potential of how much muscle you can possibly build. And so whether you're training 2 times a week or 3 times a week, or if you're able to train 3 times a week but you're still training once a week instead or 2 times a week instead, at the end of the day, you're going to get to the exact same place, which is your genetic potential. If you suspect that frequency might be the reason for your lack of progress in the gym, I recommend you first take at least 1 to 2 weeks off to make sure that you are fully recovered into your next workout. And then after that, what I want you to do is you cut your frequency in half. You double your recovery time. And so if you were training, with 1 day of rest in between each workout before, you make it 2. And if you were training with 2 days of workouts or 2 days of rest in between your workouts before, you make it into 4. And now this doesn't mean that you're going to do this forever. This is just to see if this was actually the problem, because if you make a big change in your program as opposed to a small change, it is much easier to see if the change actually did something. And so if you make a big change like cutting your frequency in half, and you notice that you start making progress again, then you can go, oh, okay, frequency was the problem. And then you can start to adjust your frequency to fit you more precisely from there. Some other things to think about regarding recovery when it comes to, making progress in the gym is that if you have very bad sleep, or you have a lot of stress going on in your life right now as well, then that can also be the reason or be contributing to why you're not making any progress in the gym. And so I encourage you that if you do have any sleep problems, or you do have a lot of stress in your life and you are not making any progress in the gym, I recommend you try to fix all of those things first before you try to, experiment with your frequency, because those things can actually be the reason why you're not making progress, and so you might not even have to change your frequency. The third and most common reason for people's lack of progress in the gym is lack of intensity. A lot of people are simply not putting in enough effort into their training. They use sloppy form and they stay far away from failure. And I mean, almost everyone has heard this before. If you aren't training hard enough, then you are simply not going to make any good progress. If you are not getting anywhere close to failure, then the stimulus is not going to be effective. And even though a lot of people have heard this and they understand that you do need to train somewhat hard in order to build muscle, the problem is that they think they are training hard, they think they are training as hard as they can, or they think that they are getting close to failure or whatever they're trying to do, but they are simply not. They think they are training as hard as they possibly can, but they are actually nowhere close. And that's because most people do not actually know how to properly train to failure, like I spoke about before. Most people do not know how to properly perform a set, which is why they can get away with doing so many. And whether you want to listen to what I said earlier when I was talking about, one set to failure and all this stuff, I actually don't recommend that most people do train one set to failure when they are training alone, because almost everyone who has not been properly instructed by someone who knows what they are doing, or has been, spending a lot of time educating themselves about how to actually exercise properly, are going to do it wrong and are not going to do it hard enough. And so for most people, I recommend they actually do more than one set when they are training by themselves, because most people do not actually know, like I said earlier, how to perform a set properly. But what I do recommend is, if you think that the problem is intensity, which a lot of the time it is, I recommend that you cut your volume, you cut your sets in half, and you focus more on training as hard as you possibly can on those few sets that you are doing. By the way, I am also going to be posting another video during the coming weeks talking about how to actually perform a set properly and how to actually perform a set to failure, and all the things you want to think about when you are performing an exercise. And this is very hard to talk about in just one video, because there's so many different exercises, and when you're talking about setup and form and stuff like this for every single exercise, that couldn't possibly be fit in just one video. But I'm going to be talking about some general guidelines for how you want to perform a set properly, and so stay tuned for that as well. But anyways, that is the video for today. I hope you guys found it helpful. And I also, like I said earlier, recommend that you go and watch this other video that I talked about earlier, which, by the way, I'm going to be remaking, so that's gonna be one of the videos that I post after this one, which is called Why Only Do One Set Per Exercise, after you watched this one. If you did find this video somewhat helpful, then don't forget to click the like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you can be notified the next time I upload. And with that being said, I will see you boys in the next video next time. Peace.